Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Kato. President Zelenskyy has met with European leaders in recent days to intensify diplomatic efforts and secure additional military aid for Ukraine. These talks come amid heavy Russian attacks, including a strike on the western city of Ternopil that killed at least 25 people and injured dozens more. At the same time, reports of recent U.S. Russia peace negotiations and a proposed 28-point plan, apparently drafted without full Ukrainian input, add further uncertainty. To discuss these developments and what lies ahead, we're joined by Vira Konstantynova, former foreign policy advisor to the Chairman of the Ukrainian Parliament. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Good day, thank you for inviting.
So let's start with Axios and the Financial Times report suggesting that the 28-point U.S. Russia peace plan is on the table, which a White House official allegedly plans to present to Kyiv. What do Ukrainians know about it?
First of all, of course, we also had known about this plan from reports from media. So from my perspective and as a former foreign policy advisor, as a public official, I would say that, first of all, I need to see the document. But again, let's expand our understanding because currently we see a significant diplomatic activity because of, first of all, sanctions imposed by U.S. on Rosneft and Lukoil. Of course, by some attempts and discussions we've heard in the Congress devoted to sanctioning Russia bill. And maybe that's the answer why right now 28-point plan emerge in terms of negotiation between U.S. and Russia. As we probably remember, first of all, we need to pay credits to the President Trump's aspirations to end the war in Europe. But from other side, back channels negotiations, it's nothing new, to be honest, because during the Cold War, Russia, Soviet Union and U.S. had also back channels negotiations in terms of strategic stability. So from my perspective, I would say that nothing new. And currently, I would say that after the announcements came from Ukraine side as well as European side in terms of frameworks as well, devoted to ceasefire or peace plan, I think that it's like a response made by Russian diplomacy in terms of trying to hold the initiative in diplomatic track.
The news of Special Envoy for Ukraine Keith Kellogg's departure has just emerged. He's due to leave the Trump administration in January 2026. How does this impact the current developments, especially in the context of the news of the 28-point plan?
Again, there is internal procedures in the U.S. So in terms of understanding the policy making in the U.S., yes, General Kellogg is significant part of negotiations and peace efforts, especially in terms of Ukrainian position and promoting Ukrainian position. But at the same time, I would say that we would have some kind of estimations afterwards. Maybe there would be some kind of internal procedures, for example, made by the Congress, because according to my understanding, Keith Kellogg, his position as special envoy was limited. So despite, good attitude exists in Ukraine towards General Kellogg's efforts, there is an internal procedures that we should follow in the U.S. and should respect.
Is Zelenskyy weakened by the frontline situation and the Energoatom corruption scandal? Like how might Ukraine's internal political crisis affect its leverage in any negotiations, really?
Again, the energy crisis, or I would say energy corruption crisis or internal crisis, like it portrayed by the media, I would like to look at the other side, because from one side, yeah, we do have problems with corruption, but at the same time, taking into account efforts made by our anti-corruption agencies and its successful efforts, to be honest. So I would say that it's a part of a normal process in Ukraine devoted to anti-corruption. And in terms of our European integration, we've heard statements made by European officials that, yes, it's a painful situation for internal politics of Ukraine, but at the same time, it's a good sign that despite war, despite martial law imposed by President Zelenskyy, political leadership supports the efforts made by our anti-corruption agencies. So I believe we would have some kind of updates in terms of political situation in Ukraine right now during this week. But at the same time, from the negotiation perspective, I wouldn't say that it's like create problems for us in terms of negotiations. I would pay attention to the fact that Russians try to use such a fact in terms of their negotiation position against Ukraine, but they fail in terms of, I would say, communication strategy in this regard.
Okay, I want to talk about Zelenskyy's diplomatic efforts. He met with Erdogan in Ankara this week, and Turkey is calling for a return to the Istanbul format. Could Turkey reemerge as a credible mediator, or are these talks more symbolic?
I would say that Turkey is a very important partner in terms of negotiations because Turkey, President Erdogan, has great relations with President Zelenskyy, but at the same time, President Erdogan has some kind of impact on Russian side. In this term, of course, mediation efforts made by President Erdogan in the past in terms of returning our people, in terms of returning our children, and as you probably know, we have a great cooperation in defense field. So I think that these negotiations are also very important, despite, some peculiarities in terms of situation on the battlefield in Ukraine and internal situation in Ukraine as well. But according to my perspective, in terms of upcoming holiday season, we need to speed up and need to increase our efforts in terms of returning our people home. So it's a top priority, both for President Zelenskyy as well for Ukrainian state.
Now I want to move on to the Pentagon delegation in Kyiv. We know that this is a high-level Army delegation, including Army Secretary Dan Driscoll in Kyiv. He's met with Ukraine's Defense Minister, Denis Shmyhal. Can you tell us a little bit more about this meeting? Is it directly linked to this potential peace plan? What is the purpose of this visit?
I would say that, of course, we need to know that this delegation will visit Ukraine after the recent diplomatic activities conducted by President Zelenskyy in Europe with our Spanish, French colleagues, and as well as Greek colleagues. And in terms of impact of this visit, of course, from one side, it's a coordination of our efforts between Ukraine and the U.S. in terms of battlefield, but at the same time, it's a formulation of request. Ukraine had already stated about our needs in terms of air defense, in terms of weapons. So I believe that this delegation would have expanded agenda, not only due to the recent military activities of Ukraine, defensive activities, but as well in terms of, securing the next weapons or securing the next steps for Ukraine in terms of self-defense against Russian aggression. And again, I believe that this delegation would have also a task to understand what kind of situation on ground right now. So it's important to have this channel also for negotiations and for support of President Trump in terms of peace process.
We know the U.S. is simultaneously stepping up military support, the Patriot upgrades and the first confirmed ATACMS strike. How do you interpret this?
First of all, we need to understand that any deep strikes is very urgent because we need to ensure that Russia can't strike on our civilians. And recent killings of innocent civilians in Ternopil made this request more urgent. So in terms of deep strikes, it's obviously that we focus on the military infrastructure of Russia. And in terms of approach made by our American partners as well, it's important to force Russia to negotiations in terms of real ceasefire, in terms of real peace deal. So I believe that attack comes as the tool, but it's not the whole picture, I would say so.
The attack on Ternopil killed 25 people overnight, including children. Does Russia's intensifying strike campaign increase international urgency for a political settlement, or does it actually harden positions?
Unfortunately, I should correct you because it's already 26 people had been killed, unfortunately. And unfortunately, according to our officials, the number of killings may rise, unfortunately. And again, it's not only Ternopil, it's tactics Russia had since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. These tactics focus on civilians. So in terms of peace or negotiations devoted to ceasefire, we need to ensure that Ukraine would have enough capabilities to protect itself until the final solution or medium solution would reach. In terms of understanding Russian tactic, we also should realize that it would continue. Despite all statements, declarations, and callings for ceasefire in Ukraine, Russia would continue to strike on civilians and would continue to strike on our energy as well as critical infrastructure. And we should be realistic in terms of estimation of prospects of peace or any deals with Russia.
Vira Konstantynova, former foreign policy advisor to the Chairman of the Ukrainian Parliament. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. And that's a wrap for World Talks. Thank you so much for being with us here on TVP World, and make sure you stay with us. Goodbye.